Hey guys, Phil here at Woods Tree Farm. It is a hot early June day here. Gonna get up to 90 degrees. And I know you just saw the video of me watering the other day, and I was out here with buckets watering by hand. We got a nice little sprinkle yesterday, some really heavy rain for a very short period of time. So it kind of seemed like we got a bunch of water. There was, on the drive in here, there's a couple driveways that slope towards the road, and all their dirt and gravel was washed out into the road. And I thought, yeah, man, we really got a lot of rain. And I came out here, checked the rain gauge, 1/4 inch. So not a lot of rain. I just pulled up a weed that was next to a tree. The roots, the dirt under that weed were all bone dry. So not enough rain to really penetrate and get what these trees need, which means if we don't get any more rain, I'm gonna be out here watering by hand even more. But everything is nice and green, you know, just enough water to keep the grass green and keep the weeds growing. Lucky us. So today I am out here talking about the trees that we planted in the fall versus the trees that we planted in the spring. And I was going to start by showing you the concolor firs. And for those of you that are wondering, we're at like 365 feet above sea level here in Central Virginia. It gets hot, and it gets hot early. So we've had weather into the 90s several times already, and going back like 4 or 5 weeks ago, we had a day or two in the 90s. So it just gets hot here. Our weather, our climate here is not very conducive for growing firs, and we know that, but we're still going to try anyway. And call us stupid if you want, but we're going to try. But I do want to show you the big difference with for us in our climate and planting in the fall versus the spring. So I've got a couple rows here. We'll walk up and down these rows. I think I did 100, or it might have been 200. I forget what we did last fall. Concolor firs. These were greenhouse transplants, so they had those little plugs. I'll show you what those look like. And we'll walk up and down these rows. We'll count how many trees have not yet survived through the fall and the winter and into this spring. And I'll tell you, the numbers are actually really low. I'm very encouraged by what I see so far. So we'll take a quick walk up here, and then we'll go over and we'll see what the same trees, these were from the same supplier, the same age, the same size seedling, and if for the trees that went in the ground this spring, we'll compare how many of those have already not survived. So let's go take a look. So here's an example of the greenhouse plug that we put into the ground last spring. And you can see here, this tree is a little over 12 inches tall. I think when it came to us, it was probably more like 10 to 12, but it's already shot off its growth for this year. And it's working on creating some new buds for next year. And you know, all in all, this tree looks good. This is a good example of what the concolors look like that were put in the ground last fall. We have some that are a little bit bigger than this, and we have some that are a little bit smaller. You know, the sizing's not perfectly consistent. Here's a smaller one, and it's in the same general condition. It shot off its new growth. Looking good. No evidence of stress, no needles that are brown, anything like that. All in all, it looks good. So we'll walk up and down this, and we'll just see how many dead ones we see. That one's good. This is actually a survivor from last year. That's a new one. That looks good. Another one looks good, though its top got eaten by a deer there last fall or over the winter or whenever. So anyway, we can go down here. We haven't hit a dead one yet. These all look good. That's a survivor from last year. It's a little bit bigger. That's another survivor. And another survivor. There are only a few. That's another one. So anyway, I get way down the road before I hit my first dead one. I actually left the fork here so I'd remember where it was. But here's one that's, you know, not gonna make it. That's what the plug looked like. You can tell, not a lot of root growth on that tree. As we continue down this row, there are lots of other trees. This one I think I actually hit with a mower earlier this year before I got all the spraying done, but still alive. on. Here's one that doesn't look quite as good as some of the others, but still alive. He might make it. The next row, I think there's one other dead one on this row. The next row's trees are all green and look good, look good, look good, look good. We can go all the way back up this row, and I think we're gonna see about the same thing with maybe 2 to 4 dead trees. There's one. So I feel okay about that. The concolor plugs that went in the ground in the fall have lost 5% maybe. These rows have like 35 trees on them, and there's, you know, somewhere between 2 to 4 trees per row, maybe 5, 6 trees per row, depending on the row. And like I said, maybe up to 5%. I feel really good about that. If I could get that, and if they last through this year at the same rate, I'd feel good about that. What we had last year was in excess of 90% losses, and that's largely due to the drought conditions that we had, and we didn't keep up with the water. All right, so we'll walk over now to where we have this spring's planting of the same concolor greenhouse transplant, and we'll see what's different. Here's an example of the same type of planting that went in the ground this spring. You can see its color's not as good. It's looking a little stressed. It's got some brown needles, but there's some new growth. Okay, this tree might make it. We'll have to see. We'll do the same thing. We'll walk up the row and you'll quickly notice a big difference. Right next to it, 6 feet away, brown tree, not gonna make it. 6 feet away, a tree that I've already run over with a lawnmower. And I did that because it was brown, not gonna make it. There's another one, brown, not gonna make it. Green one that still has buds intact. I'm gonna guess this tree's not gonna make it. It has decided not to shoot off its buds for this year. So even though it looks green, probably not gonna make it, but I'll continue to weed around it and water it and all that, and we'll see what happens. 6 feet away, not gonna make it, not gonna make it. Can't even find a tree, not gonna make it. There's another one, probably not gonna make it. Okay, you're seeing the trend here. There's one that looks good, actually shot off its new growth. That one might survive. Not gonna make it, not gonna make it. Maybe. Got some clover here, needs to come out. The buds are still intact, hasn't shot up in the new buds. Okay, so I just walked up the first 2 rows. The first one had 10 trees that might survive. The second one, I counted 7 that look like they're in okay shape and might survive. That's out of 60 trees on 2 rows, 30 trees in each row. So not a good success rate based on the spring. And what happened with these trees was it got hot early. We had a couple little dry spells of maybe 2 weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks. And these little seedlings, these little plugs, really didn't like those dry spells. That's what I'm thinking. It's my theory. And we can see, you go and pull these things out, just like I showed you in the other one. Here's one that's not going to make it. That's all you get. And as soon as that dries out, this tree's done. And we can see this tree, even though we got a little bit of rain overnight last night, this whole plug is reasonably dry, and all of the roots, you can tell, have just given up. They've given up. So I think the deal is with those little short plug seedlings, you've really got to keep them moist. And the best shot of us doing that in Central Virginia is going to be if we plant them in the fall. The real result for us is how these trees do through the first summer in Central Virginia. So even the ones that we planted in the fall, even though they look better now, we'll see how they get through July and August and into our early hot Septembers. And if they survive at the same rate that they're sitting right now, I will gladly repeat what we did last year and order some more of these for a fall planting. The next trees we'll take a quick look at are our Canaan firs or Canaan firs. I don't know how you pronounce that, but C-A-N-A-A-N, Canaan Firs. They're native to the mountains of West Virginia, so not terribly far from here, but a completely different climate. In the fall, we planted 2 different shipments of Canaan Firs. One was a 2-year-old plug, which was just slightly bigger than the concolor plugs. And the result, I'll just not walk up and down the row, I'll save you the time. The result's pretty similar. These trees are a little bit bigger on average than those concolors, but they look good. They shot off their new growth this year. They're forming new buds already for next year and looking good. Don't look stressed. They look healthy, good color, good shape, etc., etc. And we can see right up this row, very few brown trees that have already died off. So the fall was good for them. So these first 2 rows, maybe even 2.5, 3 rows, are the plugs. See all these looking good, looking good. And then the last 2 rows over here are slightly bigger. These were bare root transplants. I think these were P2, P+2, I think. So they started as plugs. They did 2 years in a transplant field. They were bigger when they were shipped to us than the greenhouse plugs. And similar result, though slightly more losses here, but generally the overwhelming majority of these trees survived through the winter after our fall planting. And there's one there that didn't. And we can go up this row. I think these rows have closer to 40 trees. Looking good. And right on up the row, you can see there's just hardly any brown trees. I think we've only lost maybe 3 per row. 3, 4 per row. Okay? Same for the next row. All the trees are looking good. In all cases of the fall planting, whether it started out as a greenhouse plug or if it was a bare root transplant, they all are doing well under 10% losses from that initial planting. And like I said, the real test will be this summer and see if they do as well through the summer, if they survive through the summer. By comparison, the Canaan Firs that we put in the ground this spring, somewhat different story, though not one that has me as concerned as the concolors. So I'll just start here. I'm walking back to the last row, and we'll do the same thing. We'll walk 2 or 3 rows and we'll kind of take inventory how many trees overall have not made it. So here's a Canaan Fir that started as the little plug this year. All of these for the most part are less than a foot tall. They're really small. And we'll walk up this row and just take a look. The ones that are healthy look good. This is an example of that. Shot off its new growth this year. It's already leafed out that growth. Starting to set some buds on the top of the leader there. Starting to think about setting some buds on the branches. So these look good. But as we go up the row, there's definitely some losses. This one's not going to do anything. We pull it out. There's its little plug. Looks good. So we'll just count these up real quick. After taking an inventory of 2 rows here, the first row had 9 trees that are already dead. The second one had 7. These rows each have 30 trees in each row. So, you know, already well over 25% loss, approaching 30% loss. And that is not at all where we want to be out the gate, knowing that future trees will also not survive. So what does this mean for us in future planting? I think, you know, the short story is when it comes to spring planting, we're probably going to stick with pines and spruces, which have done a lot better for us. We are also looking at maybe experimenting with some additional species, like we did the Leyland cypress this year. We put 100 of those in the ground. Still, you have to be determined how they're doing. And then in the fall planting, we'll probably, you know, focus more on doing some of those more sensitive tree varieties. So that's where we're at right now based on what we've seen so far. This is kind of an evolving thing for us. So if we end up losing all of the firs from the fall fall planting this summer, if we lose all the ones from the spring planting this summer, I might start to change my thought process. Might start to, you know, come to grips with the fact that we might not be able to grow firs here. Just have to kind of wait and see. But the Norways are doing great. You look at these first few rows of Norways here, and we've lost very few of those. So just knowing that the Norways aren't quite as marketable or aren't quite as desirable as Christmas trees, I'm a little bit leery of overplanting those. I would rather have a mix of pines and different kinds of spruces. I'm looking at maybe getting some of the Mower spruce, which are supposed to be more drought tolerant. They also are supposed to have better needle retention. They just have a slightly blue color, kind of like a blue spruce. But point being, we're still figuring out which species and which varieties are going to do best on our farm and in our climate here in Central Virginia. So wanted to share what we've learned with you so far and how we're kind of making observations on the successes and failures so far as well. So if you got any questions or comments, obviously leave those below. If you like this video, if you enjoyed this video, if you learned something, hit the like button. I appreciate that. And if you want to keep up with what we're doing on our 43-acre farm here in Central Virginia, hit the subscribe button as well. Would love to have you follow along as we put out multiple videos every week. So that's all for today, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.